welcome back. Today we're getting right back into SCP-5000Y. A lot of stuff going on in this one. We're going to go ahead and finish it out in part 2 here, so let's go ahead and jump right back into it right where we left off.
SCP-2200 is sort of a tricky SCP to summarize in a sentence or two, but basically it's a sword that causes victims killed with it to be recreated on an island in metal form. These metal copies retain their former memories and personalities, but don't need to eat, drink, or sleep. But they can still die in this form as well. The Foundation managed to mass-produce these swords, which teleport to individuals who are likely to use them, and the island where the metal copies appear is now overflowing, with living copies trapped under dead ones. Probably not the most effective strategy the Foundation has come up with, but there you go.
You better hope those metal copies don't figure out a way to get off that island and seek vengeance or something.
SCP-2241 is a 7-year-old boy with fledgling reality bender abilities that the Foundation was previously studying, with the O5 Council interested in raising him as a useful tool. Seems they got their wish, as 2241 is now being used to wipe out refugee camps, and they're sending him over to the bunker at Ganzir, since they're still having trouble breaking in. SCP-2466 is an app on a smartphone that plays out like a battle from the Pokemon series of games, with the player fighting against a Mega Charizard X. The app compels residents of a specific town in California to carry out certain actions based on the Charizard's moves, which range from socially disruptive to violent or suicidal.
I've definitely not heard of this one. Okay, sure. Pokemon.
This app was used by the Foundation for some time until it permanently crashed, presumably because there were no residents left in that town. Again, not incredibly effective overall. SCP-2639 are 3 individuals who somehow got trapped in a server running the video game Quake, and are able to manifest occasionally in the real world for a short time.
I was gonna say, I was like, I recognize that symbol.
Carrying out a death match that is capable of destroying structures and killing non-participants. Since the individuals can't die, possess heavy firepower, and are exceptionally bored, the Foundation had previously recruited them as an MTF, sent into extreme situations requiring the elimination of hostile non-human targets.
I mean, they would make great MTF soldiers, wouldn't they? They can't die. Probably have unlimited ammo. I mean, they're essentially video game characters that have been brought out into the real world. So, I mean, yeah, they would make good MTF guys. Send them up against the hardest, most dangerous opposition you can find. And it doesn't matter if they get taken out or not. They can just respawn and you can send them back in.
The group of 3 were average teenagers and really didn't want to harm anyone. In this situation, the Foundation sent them into survivor communities and opposing groups to kill everyone present, telling them that they were monsters that have escaped from containment. The 3 soon figured this wasn't the case, and after a short time, have ceased all hostile activities for the Foundation's behalf.
Take that back. It seems like they didn't lose their minds, and that they, while being trapped in a video game, are still sane, reasonable people that don't want to hurt other innocent people. And they refuse to work for the Foundation. Good for them. As a matter of fact, you would think that if they saw what the Foundation was doing, that they would actively fight against the Foundation and be a real thorn in their side.
Pietro makes a journal entry about sitting near a campfire in his suit with a group of GOC soldiers who don't know that he's there. He appreciates the company regardless. The GOC soldiers don't really seem to have anywhere to go at this point and are simply wandering. Pietro contemplated momentarily about asking them for help to get to 579, but thought better of it, commenting that he's less of a tourist now and more of a ghost. He does tap into a GOC database while hanging out near the soldiers, though, and retrieves an interview log from inside Ganzir. The interviewer is a commander with the GOC, Morrison, and the interviewee is a captured MTF agent, Ross. Morrison had captured the MTF when they were trying to sneak into the bunker, and so far none of them had spoken at all except for Ross. Ross says it's because they've met before, during a joint operation between the Foundation and the GOC a few years ago. When they caught the MTF, they had been trying to sneak in with a group of refugees. Upon being noticed, the MTF opened fire into the crowds before being captured. When asked if he thinks that's crazy, Ross simply laughs, saying that the GOC are crazy as well if they think they can do anything to stop the Foundation. When threatened with enhanced interrogation, implying torture, Ross laughs again and says they can do whatever they want, since he's not afraid after realizing that you're not supposed to feel pain. Morrison asks what he means, and Ross hesitates, telling him that he wouldn't want him to say. Morrison responds that he does, but Ross says he wasn't talking to Morrison. Upon further pressuring, Ross acquiesces, but what he says is inaudible in the recording. The doctor present in the room tells him that he'll have to speak up, as the microphone only has so much gain. What Ross says next is removed from the record, but both Morrison and the doctor can be heard loudly screaming, with the sounds of wet cracks and rushing wind heard. Ross says they've done this to themselves, and he had warned them. He really liked them, so he was trying to be nice. He remarks that they fight in the light, so you can die in the dark. This is a twist on a common Foundation motto: we die in the dark, so you can live in the light. The log ends with Ross calling them disgusting, and Pietro notes that right after this, some emergency resulted in the destruction of Ganzir. The latter part of this interview log is pretty important, as it is very similar to another interview log, the one with SCP-5000, the hard-to-destroy reptile. I haven't really talked about 682 much, but its primary feature of being practically impossible to destroy isn't really important here. What is important is its hatred of all life. In an interview log with 682...
Yeah, this thing definitely wants to kill everybody. My question is when the Foundation approached him and told him about their new direction, they said, hey, 682, we agree with you now, and we want to help you eliminate everybody off the face of the planet. We just ask that you don't eat us first. Don't kill us first. Keep us around so that we can help you destroy everything. Once that's done, do what you will. Because if they're really trying to wipe everybody out, that also includes themselves. And they know that. They know that they'll be wiping themselves out. So I wonder if they made maybe like a deal, quote unquote, with the indestructible reptile to act as temporary allies while they're burning the world down. If not, I mean, you would think that releasing him would kind of be counterintuitive, because if he decides, well, you know, you guys were the ones that kept me locked up, so I'm going to eat all of you first. Well, if he destroys the Foundation before the Foundation destroys the world, then there might potentially be a chance for the world to fight back and survive. So, yeah, I don't... Okay, let's see what they say.
After it finished slaughtering some farmers, it's reluctant to speak. It mumbles something incomprehensible, so the doctor present remarks that the microphone only has so much gain, and it needs to be moved closer. While mauling the D-Class's body, who is tasked with moving the microphone, 682 is heard saying that they were disgusting. This connection isn't a coincidence, and we're definitely going to delve further into this later, but just take note of it for now. Pietro makes another...
He says they're disgusting. This might be another piece of evidence pointing towards Foundation personnel, Foundation staff, the O5 Council, the researchers are all affected by something, and it's making them not really human anymore. And maybe that's why the lizard was like, yeah, you guys are something's different here. It's you guys are not the same humans that you once were.
Entry discussing how it's even harder to keep going now that the GOC are pretty much wiped out, as there seems to be even less hope left now. Pietro stopped eating and drinking, since the suit can sustain him anyways, and the Foundation has been spreading any number of weird viruses across the globe. He's seen corpses in pretty much every condition imaginable, including walking around. He still occasionally opens the briefcase, but it isn't working as well as before, as he isn't jumping ahead as much and doesn't feel as great afterwards. He ponders if he's growing numb to it, and wonders why he's even going to 579. We get info on a few more SCPs being used by the Foundation. SCP-3078 is a series of images that causes viewers to break out in uncontrollable laughter until dying by suffocation. The Church of the Broken God managed to get the internet back online, but the Foundation quickly spread thousands of copies of 3078 until the Church brought the internet back down again. 3179 is a highly intelligent liquid metal alien capable of expanding its mass, altering its form, and creating smaller entities that can act autonomously. It was originally found by a branch of the Church of the Broken God, who believed it to be sent by their deity, but after discovering it to be invariably hostile, they managed to contain it and hand it over to the Foundation. After being released, it sparked a bit of a civil war in the Church, as they're divided on whether or not it's actually their deity. Either way, it's now continually pumping out what are essentially Terminators.
Okay.
SCP-3199 are large, hostile humanoid entities that continually lay extremely durable eggs containing more of their species. They hunt live subjects around their hatchlings, liquefying internal organs and bones and feeding the corpses to their young.
Haven't come across these guys before.
This one didn't require much creativity, as the Foundation has just been airdropping the eggs around the world. Pietro keeps moving, a bit slower than before as he's losing motivation. He's been seeing increasingly strange things in the world, including what he calls blinkers, which he's pretty sure were created by the Foundation somehow. They're statues of MTF soldiers with empty sockets for eyes, and arms carved into blades.
I think I recall hearing about these somewhere.
If you look at them, nothing happens, but if you look away, they rapidly move and kill you. Somehow, the Foundation managed to turn MTF soldiers into copies of SCP-173. They don't kill Pietro when he stops looking at them, but they do stop when he is looking, so he figures eventually they'll start swinging just to try and hit him, so he avoids them. The other thing he's seen is a lot weirder. A person stretched out on the horizon, like a bad Photoshop effect.
That was interesting about the MTF soldiers who are basically turned into the statue. The exclusion harness that the guy's wearing keeps them from seeing him, but they can still feel that he is perceiving them. So it's not a total exclusion suit. They may not be able to see him, but they can still sense that they're being watched. That's pretty interesting.
The person's body was stretched from the ground up to the clouds, with gaps in space around its body like wings, and it just seemed to be floating. The Foundation seemed to be fighting this anomaly, and Pietro thinks about going to talk to them as they might not be affected by what's going on, but decides not to risk it. He leaves another journal entry lamenting that he saw a kid die today and could have helped her, but didn't. We get our last couple of entries about anomalies the Foundation are using. SCP-4290 was a massive entity that had been sealed away 10,000 years ago, and then died 9,000 years ago due to malnutrition, making it effectively neutralized. The Foundation decided to take SCP-008, a virus that reanimates corpses as zombies, enhance it using SCP-914, the Clockworks, and revive the entity.
Oh boy. I feel like the Clockworks is actually far underutilized for both good and bad purposes. I feel like it's far underutilized in a lot of these SCP. I'll tell you right now, if I was a Foundation person and I knew about the clockworks, that'd be my whole thing. That'd be my whole field of study. I would just find out everything that the clockworks can do. I would put everything conceivable through the clockworks, and then I would use those tools created by the clockwork to help secure and contain and protect myself. And then the Foundation, why not make it so that the clockworks can create the perfect containment cell? Why not make it so the clockworks can create the perfect substance to make a containment cell that can contain anything? I feel like the clockworks has endless possibilities and it's just not used enough. Here's a perfect example of it being used to improve a zombie virus, essentially, and resurrect an old monster beast Cthulhu creature that had died thousands of years ago. Like, now you're thinking outside the box.
A group from the Serpent's Hand known as Kaiju-mancers tried to take it on, but the results are unknown. And Pietro says that they should have gone with the rest of the Serpent's Hand when they detached the Wanderer's library from this universe.
Oh, they escaped. The Serpent's Hand escaped by using the Wanderer's library. Hey, if you've got a pocket dimension and you can cut it off from the rest of reality, why not during the apocalypse, right? Why not?
SCP-4666, the Yule Man, is a rather horrific entity that stalks families during Christmas time, eventually murdering most of the family and abducting a child who is forced to make toys out of other children. The Foundation, of course, manages to use certain temporal anomalies so that it's Christmas every day, which normally might be the topic of a Disney film, but in this case probably not. There are presumably more examples, but Pietro decides that nobody's ever going to read this anyways, and stops. He later comes across a teenage girl sitting at a makeshift fire in an abandoned jewelry store. He recognizes the ruby amulet hanging around the girl's neck as SCP-963, meaning that this is the one and only Dr. Bright.
Ah, Dr. Bright's still kicking around, huh? Well, I guess he can. He's inside of that necklace jewel, and I mean, as long as people are around and they see that shiny jewelry, they're gonna pick it up, so I suppose Dr. Bright could conceivably survive until he's the last person on Earth.
Pietro turns off the perception filter on the suit, startling Bright with his sudden appearance. Bright assumes that Pietro was sent here to kill him, but Pietro assures him that he managed to get away from the Foundation. Bright remarks that
This is the first time that Pietro's interacting with anybody since the beginning of this whole thing. This is the first time he's actually stopped and tried to speak with someone. Dr. Bright, yeah, here's a person who understands anomalies and the anomalous, and he understands why everything's crumbling down. Well, maybe not why, but he understands who did it and how they did it.
Pietro's face looks like a disaster and desperately needs sleep, despite Pietro's response that he's fine. Pietro sits across from Bright and tells him that he got lucky when this all started, managing to make it into the suit. Bright, of course, was a senior staff member, meaning that he received those files that the O5 Council sent out after making a discovery about the human psychospace.
Okay, and?
The first set of files were a series of instructions, which caused suicides and resignations, if you remember. But Dr. Bright can't remember the instructions because of the second set of files sent out. These were later sent out to all personnel, and Bright reveals that they were just a bunch of images of eggs, trees, and other religious stuff. It didn't mean anything to Bright, and he suspects that whatever effect they would have had was nullified by his amulet. Pietro believes that to mean it was some sort of mimetic agent, meaning an anomaly that affects someone's mind.
Kind of theorized about that in the last video, but definitely a mimetic control agent they're using.
But Bright disagrees, saying that he knows what a mimetic agent feels like, and this was different. It felt like he was supposed to be released from something, rather than something being forced on him. Basically, Bright doesn't know what's going on either. When Pietro tells him that he's going to 579, Bright says that there are easier ways to commit suicide, as not even he knows what 579 is, and he's a pretty big deal. Bright instead is heading towards SCP-1437, an endless hole that leads to an unknown number of parallel universes. Bright plans on throwing the amulet down the hole and seeing where he wakes up.
I mean, not a bad plan. It's not a super great plan, but not a bad plan. If this entire reality is completely destroyed, then there's nothing left for you here. Bright is not. I mean, he kind of technically is immortal, but his bodies are not immortal. So if there's no more people to inhabit, then he's done. He's gone. That's the end of Dr. Bright. So screw it. Throw the medallion into the pit that leads to another world, and as long as, like I said, as long as there's people around and they see that shiny object, they're gonna pick it up, and you have a new host. So
the two wish each other luck and part ways. We'll dissect what this conversation means at the end. More files got deleted, and Pietro is now standing outside of the site containing SCP-579. He doesn't see any guards, and security seems to be completely down, as if the place has been abandoned for quite some time, despite it being supposedly an extremely high-priority facility. He's having difficulty breathing, and has a feeling of an impending end. As he walks closer, he feels like someone is pressing a gun against the back of his head, pushing him forward. He doesn't know what SCP-579 is, but he knows that it's looking at him. The next entry is quite a bit worse for Pietro, as the facility was not empty, but instead filled with blinkers, the SCP-173 copies. They can't see him, but have figured out that he's here, and are now slashing everything in sight. Pietro's leg gets gouged, and although they're not chasing him, they're headed towards 579's containment cell as well. Pietro makes it there first, sealing the door behind him as they start to slash through it. There are a number of instruments monitoring 579, but even without them, he knows that 579 is here because he can feel it. There's a hole in the floor that leads to 579, but it's not a direct drop, as Pietro hoped that he could just throw the briefcase down. Instead, it looks like he's going to have to jump down the hole and throw the briefcase on the way down, inevitably resulting in his death. Pietro comments that he's realized he's not the detective in a detective story, but instead the murder victim. He dies for someone else's story, and the human race is going with him. He knows who is responsible for this destruction, and how, but he still doesn't know why. He ponders why this is happening. Why did the Foundation send out those files? Why did Ganzir fall? Why did he take this briefcase across the world? Why is he here? And why is he going to die? He begs anyone reading this to figure it out, and then he drops down the hole. We see a black image labeled as SCP-579, and then a final journal entry reading, "Oh, so that's how it is," before Pietro's life signs are lost. This is when he appeared dead in the suit inside of the 579 containment cell. I've already explained what happened there, bringing 055 and 579 together to reset the timeline, but it's finally time to explain why. There are clues sprinkled throughout this entire article that we can piece together, but the black image at the end is a big one. Hidden in the image is a secret dialogue between two members of the O5 Council. One is looking at a document with shaking hands, asking if this is confirmed. The other nods, saying that they got the report from Numa staff yesterday. It's everyone, even the Council. The first overseer notes his incredulity at finding himself agreeing with that damn lizard. They'll have to disseminate a cure among personnel before they get things underway, because it'll try to stop them otherwise. The other overseer asks God to help them, but the first rebukes him, saying that that's it talking. We know the lizard referenced is 682, who is critical to this piece, but what they're referring to as it is a bit more nebulous. Let's go back to Project Numa, which discovered something rather startling in the human psychospace.
Okay. Yeah, so technically this is where it should have started, right? This Project Numa. This is the genesis of everything that happens here in SCP-5000. Whatever it is they discover here is what causes the next chain of event series that ends the world. So, let's see what they say.
This means that they found something intrinsically present in the unconscious minds of every human, and it was startling enough to cause the Foundation to want to wipe out humanity. What's more, this discovery led the O5 Council to agree with SCP-682, who despises all life. The Council spread a series of instructions to their senior staff members, which we don't get to know about, but it did lead many of them to kill themselves or resign. This likely means that they were informed of what was about to happen to the world, but weren't mentally altered just yet. This happened with the second set of files, which were spread across most of the Foundation, immediately ceasing all suicides and resignations, because now everyone was fully committed to wiping out humanity. While some would believe this to be a memetic agent that forcibly altered the Foundation's thinking, Bright confirms that it was not. In other words, instead of planting new code into a person's brain, whatever was in the second set of files released something in their brains, allowing them to see what was in the psychospace that makes humanity disgusting.
Okay. This is kind of an interesting concept. What we see as our own perception, sight, sound, taste, feeling, all of that, it's all subjective and it's all incredibly, incredibly narrow. Like, we can only see things that are in the visible light spectrum. We can only see things that reflect the visible light spectrum. So why we can't see X-rays, gamma rays, or radio waves, or television waves. That's why we can't see infrared or ultraviolet. There's so many things just around us all the time. We are constantly bombarded and bathed in all kinds of, waves and radiation and all kinds of stuff, but you can't see it and you can't feel it. Same thing goes for sound. We can only hear a small section of possible sounds. There's things that are on such a different frequency that we just can't hear them at all. Our auditory senses just don't pick them up. Then you've got people who have been known to do psychedelics is a good example, especially say DMT or something like that. A lot of people believe that these psychedelics, when they alter your brain chemistry, some people believe that what it's actually doing is it's potentially widening your spectrum of senses temporarily, obviously, so that you're able to possibly see things that you wouldn't normally be able to see. And I'm not talking about like vivid hallucinations. I'm not talking about taking a drug and seeing a leprechaun dancing on your stove. No, I'm talking about colors and patterns and things like that, especially on DMT. A lot of people believe that what that's doing is basically removing a filter from your senses and allowing you to perceive more than you normally would. This feels similar to that, where if this is a message that was sent out to activate something deep inside the human brain, deep inside the human psyche, that removed one of those filters that maybe allowed us to perceive something deep within our own mind, something deep within our own psyche, something that we don't normally get to perceive. That's what this kind of feels like. And whatever it is that they activated in the human brain, it allowed them to, I guess, see the same thing that the indestructible lizard sees in us. Whenever he looks at us and he sees us, He hates what he sees, and he says, "You're disgusting, and you all need to go." Apparently, whatever they saw made them realize that about themselves, about humanity. They look at themselves in the mirror and they say, "Oh, this is disgusting and it has to go." This is pretty interesting right here at the end where we're really kind of getting into the meat of this.
Essentially, what they were released from was humanity, becoming outsiders like 682. This process involved a completely different way of thinking on multiple levels, as for one, they no longer felt pain, as shown in the stabbing test, and two, they were no longer considered part of humanity, as shown by SCP-1440, which destroys anything nearby connected to humanity. Dr. Bright wasn't affected by the second set of files because of his amulet, making him immortal, which already disconnects him from humanity. It's interesting that the project that discovered all this was known as Pneuma, which is an ancient Greek word meaning breath, but is also used in religious context to mean spirit or soul. Pneumatology is the study of the Holy Spirit, an aspect of God that makes up the Holy Trinity. The it referred to before by the O5s could be the human soul, an essential part of what makes us human. The researchers that Pietro came across in Site-19 were missing a spark from their eyes, perhaps suggesting that they no longer possessed a soul. It's also interesting that the GOC's fortress was named Ganzir, after a palace in the Sumerian underworld where the goddess Ereshkigal ruled over the dead. Those that still had souls, the refugees, were allowed to enter Ganzir, but those without them, the Foundation agents, relentlessly worked to break in. Ganzir finally fell because the soulless came inside. Perhaps the stretched figure that the Foundation was fighting was indeed the Holy Spirit, who helped guide Pietro towards the end goal so that humanity could be saved. Perhaps I'm overthinking things, but since the theme of the SCP-5000 contest was mystery, it's fitting that the winner would be so incredibly mysterious. Regardless of what it all means, SCP-5000 is a fascinating tale of one man wandering like a ghost through the end of the world, as the SCP Foundation tears it apart. In the end, maybe it doesn't really matter to find all the answers to the question why, as there will always be more questions. One of those questions might be, if this all happened once, why can't it happen again?
All right, guys, that was SCP-5000. Why? That was an interesting story about a man inside an SCP exploring the end of the world. Very interesting. We got to see what would happen if the Foundation decided to turn against humanity and release all the horrors that it contains onto the world. Some of them kind of weird, kind of dumb. Some of them ingenious. Their methods for taking people out. It was pretty interesting to see how some of these SCPs were used, but there's still more questions. I'm still kind of curious on what happened to some of the other SCPs. What happened to the SCP God? I would really like to know what happened with the Plague Doctor. I'd be real curious to see the Plague Doctor's view on what was happening during this version of the end of the world. Is whatever was unlocked in the human brain that caused people to agree with the indestructible reptile, is that related to the pestilence that the Plague Doctor's trying to cure? Is it potentially the cure that he is seeking? You know, that's what I'm curious. What would the Plague Doctor say about everything that's happening? If there is something about it, let me know down in the comments. If not, then hey, that's par for the course for the SCP universe. More questions and answers. That's how they always do it. Overall, I will say this was a pretty enjoyable SCP. Was less a video about the SCP itself than it was the journey that the SCP took. As far as the guy who managed to get into the suit, it seems like he did save the world and he did reset the timeline at the cost of his own life. But at that point, when everything else is gone, you may as well, right? I hope you guys enjoyed the video as much as I did making it. If you did, go ahead and click that like button. If you're not subscribed already, go ahead and click that subscribe button. Really helps me out. As always, leave a comment down below and let me know what other SCPs I should be checking out in the future, and we will get to those. Thanks for stopping by. Thanks for watching the video. Take care of yourselves and have a great day.